I came home early. The flight was ahead of schedule, a rare blessing that now feels like a curse. My briefcase still held the scent of hotel linen and airport coffee. I hadn't even changed out of the blazer she gifted me last Christmas. There was a light on in the hallway, one we never left on. That's the first thing I noticed. The second was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, the suspicious kind. That hush that blankets a house when something's off but hasn't made a sound yet. I remember turning the doorknob and feeling it slide too easily. The deadbolt hadn't been turned. We always lock it, out of habit more than fear. That small detail, that unlocked door, lodged in my gut like a warning shot. Shoes by the stairs. His, not mine. Too large, too new. Not even tucked away, just there. Bold. Unbothered. The TV was on in the living room. Low volume. I knew the show instantly. Our show. The one we started during lockdown, when the world slowed down enough for us to believe in closeness again. The kind of show you save episodes of just to watch together. But I was watching it alone. And she wasn't alone. I walked toward the bedroom. Slowly. My heartbeat didn't race, it sank. That's the only way I can describe it. It dropped like lead in water. Heavy. Cold. Final. And then I saw it. Her back. His arms. Their stillness. Everything in me screamed. But I didn't shout. Not yet. I just stood there, staring at the bed that used to be ours. Not ours anymore. She didn't even flinch. That's what gutted me more than anything. Not the betrayal, not the sight of some stranger's arm draped over the woman I once thought was the only quiet place left in my life, but her stillness. Like I wasn't even real anymore. Like I'd already been erased. There was no gasp. No startled cover-up. Just the soft hum of the TV and the rise and fall of her breath, calm as a Sunday nap. It hit me then, this wasn't some mistake. This wasn't a drunken lapse or a one-time collapse of judgment. This was routine. Practiced. Lived in. I should have walked away. Men like me are taught to walk away. Swallow it. Move on. Be strong. But I didn't feel strong. I felt like the walls were closing in, not out of rage, but out of revelation. The kind that burns colder than fire. The kind that doesn't explode, it rots you silently. I stepped further into the room, and only then did she turn. Her eyes met mine. Not wide, not ashamed. Just annoyed. Like I was interrupting something. And in that instant I realized something that nearly broke me in half. She didn't love me anymore. Not a little. Not at all. There was no apology waiting on her lips. There was no recognition of what this moment was doing to me. The man beside her, I couldn't even see his face yet. He turned his head slightly, just enough to glance over his shoulder, then back at the ceiling. Like I was nothing. Like I was late to my own funeral. I stood there, shoes still on, my hand still holding the strap of my briefcase, and I whispered her name. Just once. Not to wake her. Not to accuse her. Just to ask the universe why. But no one answered. Not even her. He sat up before she did. Still shirtless, still silent. Like I was the one who needed to explain myself. His body language wasn't defensive, it was bored. The kind of posture that said he'd done this before. And I wondered how many times he had. How many Thursdays or Tuesdays or lazy afternoons while I was stuck in airports, on calls, in rooms where no one knew my first name, she had let him live in the life I worked for. He didn't speak. Not a word. Just looked at me, eyes steady, unafraid. Younger, maybe mid-30s. Hair too neat, skin too unweathered, the type of man who still thought heartache was poetic, not paralyzing. And there I was, standing at the foot of the bed that still had the dent of my side in the mattress. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't make a scene. I just stared at him, at them, and the strangest thought entered my mind. So this is what the end looks like. Quiet. Cheap. Not even dramatic. She finally sat up, pulling the blanket around her like modesty meant anything anymore. And then she said it. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "Let me explain." Just one word, so casual it felt like a blade under my ribs. Why? Why what? Why I came home early. Why I walked in instead of knocking on my own door. Why I still cared. I opened my mouth, but the words caught in my throat like gravel. I wanted to say something profound. I wanted to ask her how long it had been, or when I'd stopped being enough, or what he gave her that I didn't. But none of that mattered anymore. Because the truth was, this wasn't a question of love lost. This was a question of respect, the kind that dies in silence long before it ever dies in bed. And as I looked at her, at the woman who once cried into my chest after her mother died, who used to trace the scar on my hand like it was a story she wanted to hear over and over, I realized I didn't recognize her anymore. And worse, she didn't recognize me. There's a moment, just one, when pain hardens into something heavier. Not sharper, not louder. Just heavier. Like lead behind the ribs. I felt it settle in my chest as I looked around the room. It still had the lamp I wired myself when we couldn't afford a new one. The bookshelf I built crooked on our first anniversary. Our framed photo on the dresser, from Florence, I think. And they hadn't even turned it down. It stared at me like a ghost. Like I was the ghost now. I looked at her, not the woman in the bed, but the woman I used to hold through flu seasons and panic attacks and quiet December mornings. And I searched for a trace of that version of her. I thought maybe I'd find it in her eyes, or in the way she clutched the blanket, or in some flicker of guilt across her face. But there was nothing. Just a void. A polite indifference. The kind you give a stranger who helped you carry groceries once. "Go downstairs," I finally said. My voice didn't shake, but it wasn't mine either. She blinked, surprised. He didn't move. I said go downstairs. I repeated, not louder, just colder. "This is between her and me." He hesitated, maybe out of ego, maybe thinking I'd throw a punch like in those bar fight stories guys tell each other to feel brave. But I didn't want a brawl. I didn't want blood or broken noses or drama. I just wanted space. And oddly, he gave it to me. Got up, dressed in silence, and walked out with the calm of a man who didn't think he had anything to lose. She stayed on the bed, still wrapped in that blanket like it was some kind of armor. And then, for the first time since I stepped through that door, I saw it. Not regret. Not sorrow. Weariness. Not for what she'd done, but for the years that led here. And that was the moment I finally understood. This betrayal didn't start with him. It started in the little things we both stopped noticing. The good nights without kisses. The unspoken dinners. The way we both stopped asking how the other was sleeping. Betrayal doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's a quiet drift. A slow undoing. And now I was standing in the ruins of a house we never noticed was burning. She sat there, wrapped in fabric and distance. I stood, coat still on, heart already off. And for the first time in decades, there was nothing left to say that wouldn't come out as rubble. But I tried anyway. "You could have just told me," I said. Not angry. Just tired. Like someone asking for the time after missing the last train. "Not like this." She didn't look away, but she didn't speak either. So I kept going, not because I thought she owed me words, but because I needed to hear mine. "Do you know what it's like?" I asked. "To work late, fly home early, carry the weight of this family like it was a badge, and come back to find out it was just a burden to you." Still nothing. I wasn't perfect. God knows I wasn't. I stopped holding your hand when we crossed streets. I forgot your birthday once. I never forgave myself for that. I was tired and distracted, and sometimes I thought just being here was enough. But I was trying. You hear me? My voice cracked. I was trying. She finally sighed. The kind of sigh you give a broken appliance, tired, not cruel, but final. "You never noticed me anymore," she said, almost a whisper. "I became furniture. Useful, silent, expected. And that landed. Because I did notice. But only in the quiet moments. The ones I never told her about. Like when she hummed while folding laundry, or when she twisted her ring when nervous. I noticed everything, I just stopped saying it out loud. And maybe love withers in silence more than it does in shouting. But him? I asked. In our bed? While my toothbrush is still wet and my side of the mattress still holds my shape. She looked down. No defense. No excuse. Just the silence of someone who doesn't want to relive their own decisions. He made me feel visible, she said. He listened. He asked questions. He didn't look through me. And there it was. I wasn't betrayed by lust. I was replaced by attention. By softness. By the version of me I'd buried under meetings, bills, and all the unspoken tired. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fall to my knees and beg for the timeline where we talked sooner, touched softer, fought louder when it mattered. But we weren't in that timeline. We were in this one. And there's no apology big enough to fix a story where both characters stopped reading each other's pages. There's a myth about moments like this, that something inside you snaps. That there's a sound, a shatter, a definitive crack that splits your life in two. But that's not how it happens. At least not for me. What broke inside me didn't make a sound. It folded. Like an old letter too many times opened, too many times ignored. I sat down on the edge of the chair in the corner, the one I used to read in while she dried her hair nearby. It squeaked, just faintly, and for a split second, I remembered the first time I brought it home. She laughed at how ugly it was. A chair for a retired detective, she said. All it needs is a whiskey stain and a monologue. I smiled then. At the memory. At the absurdity. At the fact that we used to laugh in this room. I gave you everything, I said softly. And it still wasn't what you wanted. She looked up at that. No, she said. You gave me everything you thought I needed. But you never asked what I missed. I stared at her, really stared. Not with anger. Not with grief. But with a kind of wonder. How long had she been gone, emotionally, before her body followed? How many meals had I eaten across from her without really seeing her face? How many nights had we said goodnight, with the same sincerity we used to set an alarm clock? I always thought betrayal would look like passion, lipstick stains, whispered secrets. But it looked like this. Two people sitting 10 feet apart, unable to meet in the middle. I still made your coffee, I said, almost defensively. Every morning. Even when we weren't speaking. I know, she replied. That's what made it worse. That hit harder than anything else. Because I thought the ritual meant something. That the small acts were still bridges, still signs. But to her, they were reminders. That we were two ghosts performing love, instead of living it. The tears came then. Not hers. Mine. Not loud, not violent. Just a few down the cheek. Slow. Reluctant. Like even my sadness was unsure if it had permission to show itself after all these years of being the strong one. And still, I stayed seated. Because even in this, even after everything, I refused to let her see me fall apart on the floor. Some men scream. Some throw things. Some go silent forever. I sat in that chair, my ugly, creaky chair, and held the collapse with both hands. And somehow, I still didn't let go. I didn't hit him. I didn't trash the room. I didn't make headlines. But don't mistake that for mercy. My rage didn't come with fists, it came with silence. With presence. With the unbearable discomfort of a man who refuses to be erased. I stood up. Slowly. Purposefully. And began to collect my things. The sound of a zipper on my travel bag was the only thing moving between us now. A strange, hollow rhythm, too casual for what was unfolding, too final to be ignored. She watched, but said nothing. Maybe she thought I was running. But I wasn't. I was choosing. Every sock. Every belt. Every little item I pulled from drawers and folded back into the suitcase was a declaration. Not of defeat, but of separation. Not from the house, from the version of myself that stayed too long in something already gone. "You don't get to break me," I said, not looking at her. "You can betray me. Lie to me. Forget me. But you don't get to define the man I walk out of this room as." That's when her lip quivered. Just slightly. The mask slipping. Because in that moment she saw it. I wasn't begging. I wasn't groveling. I wasn't trying to fix it. I was done, in the rare, sacred way only a man who has been torn to the edge can be done. Not bitter. Not loud. Finished. And here's what no one tells you. Walking away with your dignity intact costs more than revenge ever will. Because it means carrying the weight, not dumping it. I turned toward the door. My suitcase rolled behind me like an old, faithful dog. And then I paused. Not for her. Not for him. But for me. I looked at the hallway mirror. I hadn't really looked at myself in a long time. Lines deeper. Eyes tired. Shoulders still square. And behind all of that, a man who had been through something. Not a victim. Not a fool. But a man who stayed decent when he had every reason not to. And that's the kind of strength no one applauds. But it's the kind that saves you. The door clicked shut behind me. Not slammed, clicked. Like punctuation. Like the final period at the end of a chapter you never imagined you'd have to write. The street was quiet. Midday sun casting long, merciless shadows. Even the trees looked indifferent, swaying gently, as if unaware the ground beneath me had just collapsed. And still I walked. No destination. Just movement. One step. Then another. My phone buzzed once. I didn't check it. Maybe it was her. Maybe it was no one. Either way, I wasn't in that world anymore. I found a bench in the park near the corner cafe. The one we used to pass on Sundays when we still had rituals. When a croissant and a lukewarm coffee felt like something holy. And I sat. And I breathed. Not deeply. Not peacefully. Just enough. There's a kind of grief no one prepares you for, not the grief of death, but the grief of still living things. Of knowing she's alive. Still out there. Still walking around inside jokes you once made together. Still laughing with a new voice in her ear, while the echo of yours is left to rot in the hallway. And yet, I didn't hate her. That surprised me. I thought I would. I wanted to. It would have been easier. Cleaner. But what I felt wasn't hatred. It was absence. Like someone had torn out a page of my life while I was still reading it, and now I'd never know how the sentence ended. I looked at my hands. They'd built furniture. Paid bills. Held her through storms. And they were still here. Still mine. That's when I realized. The house, the bed, the routine, all of it could be taken. But not this. Not me. I may have lost a partner, a home, a version of my past. But I walked away with something else. I walked away with my name. With the dignity to say I didn't throw mud, even when I was covered in it. With the strength to leave, not in rage, but in clarity. And clarity. That's what breaks a man, and then builds him again. So I sat on that bench. And I let the weight settle. Not to drown in it, but to carry it like a man should. With both hands, a steady spine. And eyes set on whatever life comes next.